Hello and welcome to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. My name is Anne Foster and we are in our Regency era season. That is where we're talking about people from what I define as the Regency era. Other people do too. It's like the late 1700s into the early 1800s, right up until the Victorians, basically. So we're really butting up to the end of what some people would consider the Regency era, but we had to talk about the Brontes. We're talking about Anne Brontë, Charlotte Brontë, Emily Brontë. Some others will come up, but those are the main ones. And the reason we're talking about them this week is largely because there's a new movie version of Wuthering Heights that is just coming out. And Wuthering Heights was a book by Emily Brontë. Probably the other most famous Brontë book is Charlotte Brontë wrote Jane Eyre. Anne Brontë was also there bringing some little sister energy, and we'll talk about that. But they all wrote, actually no, Emily only wrote one book, but there's various Brontë books. We're going to talk about them all. And I'm not a Brontë girly. I'm a Brontë neutral person, but I know there's so many people who are passionate about them. And one person who's passionate about them is today's guest, Lana Wood Johnson, who I think I've just unmuted. Have I? Lana, try to say something. Yeah, you're still muted. I don't know how to unmute you. It's terrible.
I've unmuted myself.
Oh, thank you, Lana. You know what? You just arrived like a ghost in the moors.
If anybody can, it'll be me. I bring the correct energy.
Just through the mists of the moors. Is it Lana?
I have perfected my shut-in era, and I will be here as your Brontë stand-in.
Yeah, so we're talking about the Brontes. So specifically Anne Brontë, Charlotte Brontë, Emily Brontë. Those are who people consider the Brontes. And one thing I'll just mention right off the bat is that they, sort of like Mary Shelley, like their lives are kind of equally famous as their most famous books, is part of what's up with the Brontes. And the reason that that happened is because their books were successful in their lives. They all died quite young of tuberculosis, which we'll get into. This is probably the most tuberculosis deaths per episode in vulgar history.
Which is all the more reason to have me.
Lana does have a lot of knowledge about tuberculosis. Yes, if you listen to our Vulgar Peace Theater on Patreon, the episode about Tombstone, we really get into tuberculosis talk. But anyway, so after the last Brontë died, I won't say which one that is because maybe you don't know the order. But after the last Brontë died, their friend, the novelist Elizabeth Gaskell, wrote a nonfiction book about the Brontes, and then they became celebrities. Like they were all dead, but they became famous. So it's like their books were popular, and then this biography came out, and then they, in death, became popular. And there's not a lot of other authors, I'm sure there are others, but to this extent where it's like their lives are often as famous as their books. And it's because it's all the same like gothic spooky vibe. Would you agree, Lana?
I mean, the only other one that I would compare them to is probably F. Scott Fitzgerald. And he did it because he was an asshole. They did it because they were strange. And I love this for them.
I love, just as I've been researching the Brontes, and I think it's because Wuthering Heights, the movie, is coming out. There's a lot more Brontë content being fed to me on various algorithms. But there's like t-shirts that say like the Brontes, and it's all done up like a heavy metal band. You know, like there's people stan these weird women. Actually, I want to say something that the three of them and you and I all have in common as of the day that this podcast comes out is we're all published authors. So,
huzzah! Congratulations. The long con has worked.
Yes. Just to drop this into this episode, because I'm going to have to, my book, Rebel of the Regency, is available now from any store, most places in the world, frankly. You can figure it out. Go to rebeloftheregency.com for your links. I'll talk about the events coming up later. But I will say that Lana and I are both older than any Brontë ever became, except for the dad. So they had a live fast. No, it's not a live fast, die young. They did not live fast.
Survive as much as you can.
Okay.
That was their mentality.
There's so much goth stuff in this. Like it really brings me to mind of like Mary Shelley, you know, learning to write on her dead mother's grave. Like that's the vibes, sort of. Like it's really just kind of like these girls growing up and everything. I feel like the sun never came out a day in their life.
Having been a goth, there's multiple kinds of goth. And Mary Shelley is like the extrovert goth that like she was just dramatic all of the time and she did all of the things and lived her whole life. The Brontes were my kind of goth, which is the traumatized goth that sits in the corner and is just dark and spooky and you're kind of sure she might be a witch. That was their goth energy that they brought to the table.
Yes. Okay. So who were these Brontes? Where did their name come from? So you'll see in the episode name, it's Bronte with umlauts. That is a name that their father invented. And I will tell you the story of who they are and why their father chose that name. So the Bronte parents, so their mother was called Maria Branwell. Branwell becomes the name of their brother. There is a boy, Bronte, who unfortunately we're going to have to talk about a lot. But that's where the name Branwell comes from.
Unfortunately, Branwell.
Yeah, you had said when I was reading this and just kind of messaging you about my Bronte research, Lana, they're sort of like the Brontes are sort of like Jane Austen's family, but in like not sort of like the Star Trek mirror universe, but it's sort of like what if the Austens were all dying of tuberculosis constantly?
What if the Austens were sad?
Yeah, what if the Austens never saw the sun?
I have a reputation of writing Jane Austen style cutesy comedy of manners. My heart and soul is a Bronte sister. And I don't know how I achieved it, but I like everything about me, like deep inside is a Bronte. Except for Branwell. I'm not Branwell.
Branwell doesn't count. Branwell is just like I don't know. Every family has a Branwell. So, do you know the meme that's like, it's that street, I feel like it's in San Francisco, something where there's like the really bright pink house and next to it is like the black house. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, my friend Annika was just sharing that and somebody had defined it as like the black house. It's like, that's Emily Brontë. And then like the pink house, it's like, that's Charlotte Brontë. I'm like, okay.
No.
And next to it, no, but next to it's a very practical house and it's like, and this is Anne Brontë. And then I was like, Branwell would be like a lamppost on this street, like if anything. Like,
kind of falling over and everybody calls maintenance to fix it and no one comes.
Yeah, Branwell is just kind of also there. Anyway, the mother is Maria Branwell. She was the daughter of an affluent grocer and tea merchant from Cornwall. So she's bringing some money into this family. Their dad is Patrick Brontë. So he is from Ireland. His name was originally Brunty, Brunty. Is that a common surname in Ireland? Don't know. But that was what his name was at birth. He was one of 10 children born to a poor Irish family in the parish of Drumballyroney in County Down. So I'm always excited when an Irish person comes into one of these episodes because I'm really interested in Irish history. And he's very much just kind of like in this era of what's going on in Ireland. So he's Anglican. I think Mariah, the mom, was Catholic, but he becomes an Anglican curate. So he left Ireland because things were shitty there because of colonialization. And he wanted opportunities. And people in Ireland saw that like, oh, this guy's like, he's smart. Like he wanted to be a writer as well. And so this is despite his very poor upbringing. I'm saying he wanted to be a writer, even though the family only ever owned 4 books, 2 of which were the Bible. Growing up, they ate what I would call the traditional diet of a poverty-stricken Irish family: porridge, buttermilk, bread, and potatoes. And he had lifelong digestive issues, which that's probably part of why. Anyway, but they're like this, like out of these 10 kids, they're like, this one could maybe make something of himself. So he ended up getting educated. He was educated in Latin and Greek by local clergymen before he got to St. John's College in Cambridge, coming over to England. So at the time that he came over to England, I think there's a lot of anti-Irish xenophobia going on. So I think this is part of where he changed his last name to try and, like so many people do, when you move to a new city, you go to college, you're like, I'm going to go by my middle name. Like I'm just, my name's not Elizabeth.
No, I need to know who I am.
I'm not Patrick Brontë. I'm Patrick Brontë with umlauts on it.
That makes me German, really.
Yeah. So I know the umlauts are, and I will say there's a memorial to the Brontes, not Branwell, but the The three main ones. There's a memorial to them in Westminster Abbey, and it was recently the Bronte like association or something. Like the memorial was done, but they didn't put the umlauts on, and this association was like, "Put on the umlauts," and then they eventually came in with a drill, and they're like, "Burp, burp."
Which is big Bronte fan energy. It's like, no, the umlauts are important.
Well, and they are, because it's like, I was thinking about this. It's like, yes, so he invented this name, and lots of people invent their names, and like, no shade, no hate against people who invent their own names. All names are invented. So is money. But just like, he invented this name, and then the daughters were like, that is our name, and that is how they always wrote their name. They always put the umlauts on. So it's like, this change happened. It's stuck.
And honestly, if there wasn't, rampant tuberculosis, they needed to be able to merge with English society. They were smart enough for it, but then tuberculosis ruined everything.
There is, just like trigger warning, tuberculosis. I don't have like a gong that I can play every time someone in the store dies of tuberculosis, but if I did, I would. Or like a church bell, just like, guess what? Tuberculosis. So anyway, Mariah and Patrick got married. He's an Anglican curate. And so he took a job in the Yorkshire village of Thornton near Bradford, which is where their children were born. And that place is still a museum that's called like the Bronte birthplace or something. Because they were born there, but then they moved somewhere else, which is also a museum, because that's where they lived for most of their lives. So they had daughters.
So many daughters.
Except for, and Branwell. So the oldest daughters, so there was Mariah, Elizabeth, Charlotte was the third, then Branwell, then Emily, and then Anne was the baby. So in 1820, which is the year that George IV became King of England, to all the fans of Prinny out there keeping track.
Why are you here?
Yeah, I welcome, but also like, look at your life choices. Actually,
it's like anti-Stan accounts.
Actually, you know what? I want to say trigger warning. Lana and I giggle a lot.
Sorry.
If you're listening to this for a very serious discussion of the Brontes, you'll have that, but it will be in between a lot of jokes and giggles. So like, and it's, you know what, with the Brontes, it's the sort of story, it's like, you have, like, if you don't laugh, then like, how do you survive?
If you don't have dark humor, you're not meant for the Brontes.
Yeah.
They're not for you.
No.
It's okay to walk away and go back to the Jane Austen episode.
Go back to the Jane Austen episode. And honestly, Lena, having you here is similar to the Jane Austen episode. Like, that's where I brought on my guest there, because I was like, I know they're a Jane Austen. There's such a fandom for that. And I'm like, I wanted to respect that and have somebody on who brings that. And like with the Brontes, like, I need you here to just like, to bring that Bronte energy. Because I'm just here with names and facts, and tuberculosis statistics. But you're coming in as like a passionate fan of one of the books, but you'll find out which one of those books when we get to them writing books.
I'm a passionate fan of two of the books. I'm just passionate in a very different way than some people. Again, we'll get to that later.
We will get to what the books are. So the thing about Patrick, the dad, so he is like part of the whole Bronte saga. And so again, like, their story was written by this woman, Elizabeth Gaskell, who I believe she's the author of North and South, the book that is like such a good like miniseries.
One of the best miniseries of all time that is absolutely on the Mulgerby's theater list.
Oh, it's so good. So Elizabeth Gaskell, so she wrote like, here's who the Brontes were. And that was based on her friendship with Charlotte Bronte and how Charlotte Bronte related stories to her. So, you know what, like any history, like that's as close to first person as you can get, really. But also, so we'll take this with the grain of salt that we take any sort of person describing something. But through Charlotte and what she told Elizabeth Gaskell, Patrick was a pretty terrifying father. He had like mood swings. He had like rages. He had a lot of strong passions, which, you know what? So does Emily. So like genetically, that seems true. Anyway, so what happens is the dad becomes the curate of this place. They have all these children, and then they move to the village of Haworth on the edge of the Yorkshire moors. So he became the curate of St. Michael and All Angels Church. And so in terms of this position, his salary was, quote, modest, but the job came with like a house for his like huge family of weird daughters and Branwell. And so they got to live there, and it was in this house overlooking the churchyard and the moors. We're going to talk about what that means for their water supply shortly, Lana, so don't worry.
And we'll hold off on the water supply.
But what I will say is, so Patrick, Mariah Branwell, the mom, she died very soon after they arrived in Haworth. Probably some sort of cancer. She died, and then he tried to find another woman to marry him, but no one would. So, like, that might say something about what he's like as a person.
It's just a lot, considering most people were down to remarry.
Yeah, no, he like tried to remarry, and everyone's just kind of like, no thanks. So he's just got these like 6 very young children.
Especially as a curate. Like, he had a guaranteed salary.
Yeah, it's like, how unpleasant was this man?
Well, I mean, probably Branwell tells us what was going on with him.
Yeah, so if he's kind of like Branwell, but older. So he, there was some part of probably why he struggled to find a wife as well was because the whole he was Irish thing, and people like were xenophobic against Irish people. And so initially, his children all, because the mother died and he was raising them and they didn't really see anybody else, they all spoke with Irish accents, which I think is interesting because the only people they saw were each other and him. So they all just spoke like him. I think later in life, they entered the world and met other people and their accents kind of shifted. But I do think it's interesting.
Some of them.
Some of the Brontes entered the world. Emily did not. Anyway, so he's the sort of dad that it's kind of like a bit like Mary Wollstonecraft's dad. Like, he's just got such a chip on his shoulder, and like understandably for like how society sucks, and he feels like he deserves better. And like, yeah, but not everyone turns that into like violent rages.
Sir, you have children.
Yeah, like I get that you feel like unjustly treated by the world, but like also, you know, you have 6 very young children. Anyway, and also, so they're living in Haworth. Living conditions were poor, high levels of early mortality. Potentially, this is related to the water supply contaminated by runoff from the graveyard.
Which is the most goth thing, including anything Emily does.
So they're just drinking cemetery water, this family.
They're almost their whole lives.
Because they live there, like, non-spoiler, like, even though some of them leave, they always return, like, to what's now called the Brontë parsonage. Like, so they're just drinking this graveyard water their whole lives. Historians have speculated that these factors may have contributed to their deaths of tuberculosis. Tuberculosis caused the deaths of, like, everyone in this story, except for the mom. That was cancer. But that's because she only just moved there. She hadn't drunk in the cemetery water that much yet. But I feel like the cemetery water would just kind of like deplete your immune system to some extent, right? Like this.
Yeah, that's the working theory.
Actually, I want to say, in terms of where am I getting this information from, I perused various books about the Brontes. There's also a very hearty Wikipedia entry about them. The Brontë parsonage website has lots of information. But if you want to read up on the Brontes, I would say The Brontes by Juliet Barker is kind of like the book. There's also a book called The Brontë Cabinet, 3 Lives in 9 Objects by Deborah Lutz, which showed some pictures of things, which I will describe to you later. Anyway, so there are these kids growing up with this kind of angry dad, drinking cemetery juice in the Yorkshire moors.
That they don't feel like they belong because they're Irish.
Yeah, exactly. And so 6 children, and then eventually, and maybe this is part of why Patrick stops trying to find a wife. It's like their aunt, so Elizabeth Branwell, their mother's sister, comes to help out. So it's kind of like, well, she can raise the children. So he's like, great, I don't need a wife then. Sweet. Like, okay. So she was there throughout their lives, basically. But also the sudden death of their mother, like that's distressing to people of any age. But I would say, like, at this point, Charlotte was 5 years old, I feel like. Emily and Anne were younger, so it's like a very young loss that they're dealing with, but get used to it, because guess what? Nothing but more family death to come. So 3 years later, 3 years after the death of the mom, Patrick sent the 4 oldest sisters, all the children except for Branwell and Anne, who's the baby. So Mariah, Elizabeth, Charlotte, and Emily, the girls, were all sent to the Clergy Daughters School at Cowan Bridge in Lancashire. So at this point, Mariah was 10, Elizabeth was 9, Charlotte was 8, Emily was 5. They previously had no formal education, which is not odd. Like we've talked a bunch this series about what kind of schooling did girls get. So that's not strange. So I do have some quotes here. Charlotte's school report mentions that Charlotte writes indifferently and knows nothing of grammar, geography, history, or accomplishments, although she is altogether clever of her age. So it was the same sort of family, kind of like the Austens were initially, where I think the dad was focusing all the educational stuff on Branwell, because that's the son, let's give him a good education. These girls, they just have to learn the skills to be wives or whatever.
He'll clearly use it.
I mean, Branwell is just, I'm trying to think if there's been someone as useless. There's been so many people in so many episodes. Listeners, let me know. But Branwell is just, Branwell. So I don't think any teachers would have said that Branwell was altogether clever of his age. What Branwell is giving me in these early years of just a bunch of children growing up in the moors, even though they're siblings, but it's a bit like in Little Women, how the girls play with Laurie when they're little kids. It's kind of here's a bunch of girls and here's a boy who they let play with them and he's into it. As children, they all got along with each other really well.
I get the feeling that he wasn't particularly clever and all the girls kind of were too clever. And he's like the anti-Henry. He just didn't have that spark to support them in any way. So but he liked going along with their fun.
He liked having a good time. Branwell.
Yes.
What that looks like as an adult again later on. So this school, which is called Lana, you call it the trauma boarding
school. If you have read Jane Eyre, you know what school this is.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and as we come across different parts of different stories, you or I may mention the Brontë sisters' books are all fictional novels, but they're highly derived from their personal experiences of things to the extent that when these novels are published, they didn't know a lot of people in the world, right? So when the books are published, it's wait, is this me? It's kind of has to be because you're the only person she's ever met who is from Brussels. So yeah, sir.
They really did originate writing people you hate into a story to kill them off.
Yeah.
They really brought that energy to the publishing world.
Yeah, the whole that advice of write what you know. It's they're okay.
Done.
A book full of shitty people who die. Anyway, so the school was horrible. So there's unsanitary conditions. They were not fed well, frequent outbreaks of disease. And after an outbreak of typhus, the 2 oldest Brontë sisters, Mariah and Elizabeth, both fell ill and died.
Typhus is a disease that comes from unsanitary conditions. It's not an infection or a water disease. It's a literally bugs living on you disease. So
yeah,
that tells you a lot about the school.
So it was horrific. And so to watch the 2 oldest sisters die. So now Charlotte is the oldest one left. And she does step into this big sister energy very hard. But she also said, she claimed, and this is through Elizabeth Gaskell's book about her, but that the conditions at the school had permanently affected her own health. Sure it did.
Yep.
And her development, because she was the oldest of the people at the school. The young Emily, we'll see how it affected Emily. But health-wise, Charlotte, she was always very short. Emily became more tall. She had very poor eyesight. I think that the older you were, the more this affected you.
But she was probably also severely malnourished.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, grew up on Greywater and then went to a school that didn't eat anything and didn't feed you and didn't treat you like a person. So
much actually, we should tell the listeners, We're going to talk a bit about Jane Eyre in this episode, but if you want to hear Lana talk a lot about Jane Eyre, join the Patreon because we're going to record that after. Just Jane Eyre.
This is the equivalent of her letting me talk about the Holy Roman Empire. This is my other Holy Roman Empire.
So we're gonna just so that we can stick to this Brontë episode, the Jane Eyre discussion will be on Patreon later. But just for people who haven't read Jane Eyre or haven't read it in a while, Jane Eyre goes to a shitty boarding school where her friend dies, right?
Yes. Well, everybody dies. She gets sent home. Well, no, she doesn't get sent home. She survives.
Everyone dies except for Jane Eyre.
Thriving, no. Surviving, yes.
So after the deaths of the two oldest daughters, Mariah and Elizabeth, Patrick, to his credit, was just wait a minute, maybe this school is terrible. So he brought Charlotte and Emily back home and he arranged for them to be taught at home, I guess with tutors or something. Let me just see. So yeah, this is just, I have in my notes just a few examples of how the headmaster of the school in Jane Eyre is exactly like the headmaster of the school that they went to the extent that the real life guy threatened to sue her for libel.
Which is a choice you make. Why would you admit that?
Yeah, why would you be
oh, how clever and interesting that she is, that she made up this horrible character that I've never considered remotely like myself.
Exactly. Just bring attention to it. It's just sir, did you run a school where all the children died? Okay. Interesting that you admit to that. So they're back at the parsonage, which is now the Brontë Parsonage Museum. So Charlotte, 9 years old, oldest sister, and she takes over care of her younger siblings under the supervision of their aunt, Elizabeth. Although it did say Patrick arranged for schooling. I think part of the schooling was Branwell went to school and then they could read his books after or something like that.
Or they could tell him what it means. He went to school and then he asked questions and they're oh, no, this is what they're talking about. Just yes, that makes sense.
And they would do all the homework for him or something. Because they were all intellectually curious sorts of people. And Patrick, the dad, remember he wanted to be a writer and stuff, and he went to college. He encouraged the children to read widely, to take an interest in current affairs, to enjoy music, art, and poetry. He introduced them to the work of Lord Byron, who we've talked about on this podcast before. And this becomes very significant to them and their writing in terms of the Byronic hero figure. Because the Brontë sisters really like a Byronic. Lana, can you explain a Byronic hero?
They like pretty people who think they're very important. they like toxic men so much. So much. Yeah. They don't have any, but they like them.
They like the concept of it. So Lord Byron, his work really, and we've talked about Lord Byron as a person. There's a whole episode about it if you want to hear how much I hate him. But this is, when you read Jane Eyre, when you read Wuthering Heights, it's just oh, okay, what is a Byronic hero? Oh, these guys in these books. Okay.
They really are the OG dark romance girlies. They know that they're toxic men. They would never actually spend time with one, but that doesn't mean that they don't love them.
And so what's really interesting is they did read very widely. They read the newspapers and stuff. They knew what was going on in the world. And so the dad shared newspapers with them. Her mother had subscribed to something called the Ladies Magazine, and Charlotte got to they were still left behind as she read them. Although Patrick later burnt these magazines because they contained foolish love stories. So okay, Patrick.
Too late for that.
Yeah. Anyway, so the children. This is such an interesting part of the whole saga. So this is them as a gang. This is where I just really picture them. It's to me, just because I know the Little Women movies quite well. The scenes where they're playing together and they put on plays and they're just, and Laurie's, it's that is the vibe. The Brontes weren't interacting with anyone else in the world. Just there with their dad and their Irish accent and their mom's sister. And so they created plays together using their toys. And they created, I don't know how much you know about this, Lana, but this whole ongoing, I don't know what we would call it now, shared role-playing universe.
They had their whole shared world.
Yeah.
They were basically writing their own fanfic from the beginning, which is really, like telling of what they ended up writing is like, it gives that overly dramatic soap opera-y vibe.
So what it's called is The Glass Town. It's a shared fantasy world. Charlotte and Branwell initiated it. Emily and Anne joined. And then later there was a schism, and Emily and Anne set off and did their own world called Gondol.
Which again, very fanfic vibes.
It's extremely nuts. Branwell Brontë, here's what he's giving us. He's giving us a very famous portrait of his sisters later on. He drew a map of the Glasstown Federation.
Pre or post schism?
Post. So you can see which area each of the siblings oversee. So the main characters of the Glasstown Confederacy were two, initially, again, like they're keeping up to date with news and events and stuff. So it was like two great leaders, and they're basically Napoleon and Wellington, but with fake made up names. And then as it went on, so it became more and more their own original IP.
The fandom drift is real.
Okay, so what it is, so the main characters were Zamorna, the Duke of Wellington's son, and Alexander Percy, known as Northumberland, who are, guess what, Byronic heroes. So they...
Very pretty. Much staring at things.
What I love, like I mentioned, they, like the dad brought them newspapers and stuff. And so they have these little, if you go to the Brontë Parsonage Museum, and I saw pictures of these in some of the biographies, they wrote stories about their fan fiction world. But like to make books, like they didn't have paper, but they would just tear off like the sides of a pamphlet or the sides of a piece of newspaper and write in the and they're using like ink pens, like, you know, with like loose ink, like the teeniest, tiniest little handwriting, these doll-sized books. And a lot of these still exist at the museum, but this is what they were doing. So they're just like, these are creative little kids.
That make do with what little they have.
Yeah, and the books are, and then they wrote like fake magazines for themselves with stories in them that are like takedown of each other's ideas.
So what happens when you only have like 3 friends and they're your siblings?
Yeah, when that is your whole world, it's just like, but also like you mentioned the trauma bonding school, like especially Charlotte and Emily having gone through that and witnessing the deaths of their sisters, like they were so close in this trauma bond type way, like very codependent.
Yeah, they realize that they can't trust anyone else and that no one is safe anywhere. Like everybody dies. They're little goth kids living their little sad goth lives in the moors.
So Branwell made a fake magazine, a homemade magazine called Branwell's Magazine.
He named it after himself. How strange.
Anyway, so as this goes, like Charlotte, and again, we know the most about Charlotte because she was friends with Elizabeth Gaskell, and Elizabeth Gaskell wrote the biography of the Brontes. But we know that Charlotte continued. She was interested in writing, you know, like myself, like a little kid, you like write books for fun. And then when you get older, you're like, no, I like writing. I'm going to try. So she got into writing poetry, which Branwell published in Branwell's Magazine, a magazine with circulation of 1, which was their house address. Anyway, so she started writing novellas, which were sort of like set in the world of their like Byronic heroes. But then she started to shift towards writing about more realistic things and not about their fake nerd thing.
Realistic with like air quotes around it.
Well, just kind of like less
realistic, like soap opera realistic, not realism.
Yeah, there's not monsters.
We're not going lip fake here. You can try to make a case for it. You will fail.
So Charlotte when she was 15, she was sent away to another boarding school in Mirfield. Here's the thing on this podcast. I have learned that when I include the names of what are to me random obscure place names in any of these stories, someone inevitably sends me a message being like, oh my God, I can't believe you mentioned Mirfield. That's where my grandmother lives. So I'm just like, I'm throwing some place names out here just for like the girlies. So she went out to Roehead boarding school and she became friends I'm just startled because she made friends with people who were not her sisters. Good for her. Two girls of her own age, Ellen Nussey and Mary Taylor.
Ellen, huh?
Is there someone called Ellen in one of her
No,
books?
there's someone called Ellen, and there are theories about Helen.
There's someone called Helen. Okay, well, we know that she's really good at cloaking people's real identities in her book.
Correct. And it's her best friend in the letter writing best friend style.
We've talked a lot this series about women and girls writing very passionate pen pal letters to each other. And what does that mean? And so she's like, this just comes right in line with Mary Wollstonecraft and Mary Shelley, with Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire, with those women from Edinburgh who ran the girls' school. So just like more gals being pals, gal pals.
Very, very good friends.
Passionate women friendships. So both Mary and Ellen, I think when Elizabeth Gaskell wrote the book, she like spoke to people who knew Charlotte. And both Mary and Ellen recalled Charlotte had old-fashioned clothing and an Irish accent. So all the way up to this point, which is, again, like, of course she still has the accent because she's still not engaging with the world other than her father and her siblings. But even into her teens, she still had this accent. But the old-fashioned clothing is interesting.
Well, they're poor. Like, they're not from a wealthy parsonage or anything like that.
No, he's the parson, and he has 5, or I guess at this point 3, but like daughters. Like there's going to be hand-me-downs. Like they're probably wearing their mom's old dresses. Like where are they going to get clothes from?
And it's not like he's going to go out of his way to get them more things. He's got to get that for Branwell.
Branwell, I'm sure, gets the clothes. So it's yet again, how many times on this podcast where it's just like you have a family and the girls are great, but it's like, oh, but the son is how we have to focus. Like how many times, like there's somebody, like Fredegund and her sons or anything, or Agrippina and Nero, where it's just like these useless sons and they get all the schooling and all the attention. It's like, well, because they're the boy. It's like there's so many women around you who would have benefited so much more. Anyway. So Ellen and Mary, her lifelong friends, very good friends. Ellen commented on Charlotte has a lack of appetite and a reluctance to eat meat, which is probably, I'm going to guess, to do with her overall health issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, she probably survived typhus. She probably survived some really awful things at that school. She's probably never had a lot of meat. So it's really hard to start eating meat when you haven't had a lot of it.
Yeah, well, because when I said like her dad's diet growing up was like porridge and potatoes, like I feel like that's all he knew. So I don't know if he was offering them anything different from that. So
he probably would have if he had a lot of money, but meat's expensive.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not growing up on a farm, like there's not animals around. So
yeah.
She also had very poor eyesight, so she was unable to join in ball games or learn to play from sheet music, which makes me sad that no one got her glasses, but she's poor. Anyway, so she's 15 years old. She went off to Roehead. Basically, she was sent to this boarding school to learn how to be a teacher. So she spent a year at this school, and then after that year, she went back to be a teacher to her siblings. So that is why she was sent there. But she made friends, so it's good that she was sent there. And it did show her and her family that at least one of them can survive.
Interact with human society?
Yeah, they don't... It's okay sometimes to leave the house.
Sometimes.
So she went back to be the teacher to Emily and to Anne. And then in 1835, so she's just kind of like, okay, we've talked on the podcast before about in this era, what jobs are there for women to do? Like, if you're not going to marry a husband and that gives you like a house and a place to live, like you need to make money for yourself. So it's like, well, you can be a governess, or you can be a domestic servant, or you can be like a seamstress. And so she's just like, teaching is the career I will turn to, because it doesn't look like these girls are going to find wealthy husbands, nor do they seem to be interested in that. So she's just becoming a teacher. So she teaches her sisters, and I guess when they've learned enough, she goes back to Roehead School as a teacher. So let me just see. She was 15. She's 19 years old. She returns to Roehead School to be a teacher. Although I want to mention as well, she hates teaching. This is not her life's passion.
This is not her passion.
There's quotes from her just being like, teaching the classes always gets in the way of me doing my writing I want to do. These kids are all annoying. I hate people. This is not, she doesn't like it, but it's just kind of like, what other job is there? Emily. Okay, so let's talk about Emily Brontë. When I first started researching them, I messaged Lana and I was like, Lana, how do you tell the Brontes apart? Which is which? But as I researched them, I was just like, okay, Charlotte is like big sister Brontë. Like she has that sort of responsible kind of energy.
She's going to keep them all alive if she possibly can.
Anne is the youngest. She didn't go to trauma boarding school. She was a little infant when her mother died. Like she's the least traumatized by life events, just by virtue of her age. So she's a bit more, I'm going to say, boring. In the sense of she's like the most capable to function in society. And Emily, the word that I keep thinking is just like feral. She's just like a feral cat, but person. Emily is like, I don't know. She's like a spirit of the moors.
She has zero interest in integrating with human society.
She loves dogs. There's some really cute pictures that she drew of her very cute dogs who she loved very much. So if Charlotte sort of took on the trauma and it became sort of maybe like she had health concerns, maybe that are exacerbated maybe by like psychological stuff, and she sort of turned inward with it, Emily just through the trauma just became like a wild beast.
The word that they like to use is like free spirit too. She doesn't care about humans.
Free spirit sounds a lot more chill than
yeah. No, she like if anybody could turn into a wild animal and roam the moors for the rest of life, it would be Emily. Like Emily didn't want to be a person anymore. And so she just didn't.
And the thing about Emily that I want to point out this week of the movie of Wuthering Heights coming out is Emily's the one who wrote Wuthering Heights.
Yes.
So anyone who's like, what the fuck is this story? It was written by her. And she didn't. When we get to the part where they start publishing books, Emily is like, no, I write things for myself. No one else is meant to read them. And they're like, Emily, like, girl, we need money. You have to publish your book. So she wrote this book for herself and it's fucking bananas. And this is who she is. Like when it's like, oh, it's like, I picture her just kind of like hair, like matted. It's just like, where's Emily? Oh, I don't know. She's just been like living in a burrow for 6 months. Like she's just like gnawing on tree bark. Like Emily is just, that's Emily.
She wants to be a wild thing that lives in the forest and she can't. So she just makes them up.
So
how much she hates society.
Everything I just said. So imagine Charlotte returns to Roehead School to be a teacher, accompanied by Emily, who is a pupil at this boarding school. Emily's tuition is being financed by Charlotte's teaching. Picture everything we just said. Emily attending boarding school.
Classes with probably reasonably well-bred young women.
And she just comes in and she's just like...
Did she bite any of them? That's all I want to know is if she bit any of them.
Emily is speaking in crow language today.
Emily's in the back explaining about like random children her father brought home one day. It's like, Dad never brought any children home. It's like, oh, did he?
And then she's like, oh, in the Glass World Confederacy, but I have my schism and this is my new, like...
Starts picking a fight with Charlotte about an imaginary place, like all of this.
I'm going to read a very politely phrased sentence. Emily was unable to adapt to life at school.
Weird.
Yeah.
She seems so up for it.
So she left and then Anne took her place there. And I just mentioned Anne. So my name is Anne. Her name is Anne. We're both the youngest siblings. Anne Bronte's books are not as famous as Jane Eyre or Wuthering Heights. And they're well regarded, but they don't really have that weird spark that Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights have.
They don't take as many risks because she liked to be part of society.
Yeah, this is because Anne was capable of functioning in the world, and that meant that the books she wrote were less deranged. So Anne is like, if we've got like feral, like creature Emily, and we've got kind of Charlotte with her like big anxiety and big sister energy, Anne is fine. Anne is just like functioning person in the world.
She's creative. Like she didn't write a terrible book. She just didn't have that weird genius spark that her sisters had because they took risks.
And her sisters took risks because they had lived through a lot of shit and just kind of gave no fucks. But Anne gave fucks.
And somebody had to, because Branwell wasn't going to do it.
Exactly. So here's a nice description. Anne was hardworking and determined to acquire the education she would need to support herself. So Emily is just kind of like not really thinking about anything other than living in the moment. But Anne was just kind of like, okay, like she could look at the family and be like, our dad's not going to live forever. Like Branwell obviously isn't going to take care of us. Like I need education so we can get a job, so we can have money because we're like 3 unmarried. Like she understood how things work. And as a little sister, I like that little sister energy. Anyway, so whereas Emily was, quote, unable to adapt to life at school, Anne was so committed to life at school, she stayed for 2 years, returned home only during Christmas and summer holidays. Like no other Bronte was ever away for so long, I don't think.
She didn't have the same trauma, so it was easy for her not to want to go back because she probably didn't like it there very much.
Exactly. Like the Bronte parsonage, which is like the house where they live in, which is now this museum. It was so much the safe space for Emily and for Charlotte. Like they kept returning. And in a way, like I think can be relatable to a lot of people who have various things where like when you're stressed, you're like, I just want to go home and just like curl up in my bed. Like that's an understandable reflex. And to them, it was like, I want to never leave this house or talk to anyone else in the world ever. Like that was where they went with it. But Anne was like, I can leave and function because she didn't have this trauma.
As the resident shut-in. Mm-hmm. It's like you don't have to like your house to know that your house is the safest place to be sometimes.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be the best place, but it's a known quantity. And when you have a lot of anxiety and trauma, like Emily didn't want to be in the house. She wanted to be in a borough adjacent to the house. Charlotte wanted to be at the house with the doors and the walls, and the windows, and everything surrounding her, keeping her safe. Emily wanted to be in the yard that she knew. Anne was like, I would like to be a person in society.
Exactly. So it's like 3 really different flavors of Bronte is what we're looking at here. So Anne is the one who, although I will say, Anne became seriously ill with gastritis while she was at school. And this is interesting.
Probably eating meat.
Probably, honestly. It's just like something other than potatoes. Anyway, but the school that she was at was Calvinist. So a minister was called to see her during her illness, which suggests that it might have been like a faith, she might have been distressed by the Calvinism of the school.
I mean, obviously it was anxiety. Like whatever was wrong with her, she wasn't actually sick. It must have been anxiety. She prayed it away. So
she was not thriving. And Charlotte, like based on the death of her 2 sisters at a school, Charlotte was concerned. And so she wrote to the father, like, she's like, we need Anne to be sent home. Like, I can't have another dead sister. And so Anne was sent home. She got
Charlotte immediately jumps to school kills people. I will not have another educational-based death on my hands.
I know, which is interesting. Like she has so much trauma about school, and then she's just like, well, I guess I'll just go to a school to train to be a teacher and then teach at a school. It's like the one place.
It's like, I don't like it, but I'm going to do it for my family.
Because it's the only job she can think of. I have, I think I posted on Instagram and it's on Patreon. I have a bingo card for this series for the Regency era, which I did early on. And if I were to redo it, I would have another square that would be like women try to open a school because that seems to keep happening. Women become teachers even though they don't like it, like, because this is happening in so many stories. Emily, so the Brontes, it's like the house has a magnetic pull, and the Brontes just keep coming back to the house. Like, they can never go too far away for too long.
House is safe. House is good.
Now, I don't know how this came to be, but somehow in 1838, Emily got a job as a teacher.
Somebody probably came across her in the moors and thought she was a wise hermit, because this is the era of the ornamental hermits.
I don't know. They just saw her out there just like digging in the ground, and they're like,
she must know things.
So she became a teacher at Law Hill School in the Yorkshire town of Halifax. Okay. How did it say? Like, she did not thrive. Okay. So she suffered under the stress of the 17-hour workday.
I mean, yes, that is also part of why I am now a shut-in. So I understand that.
No, I think a 17-hour workday would take it out of even, you know what, Anne Brontë, I think, would struggle under that. Emily also hated the pupils. She thought they were all assholes.
Well, they were human.
They kept coming up and asking her questions.
Why do you want to know things?
Stop bothering me. She preferred the company of the dog.
I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, she's just like, why do you keep disturbing me? I just want to hang out with the dog. It's like, Emily, you're the teacher.
Like, they're paying you to be here.
Anyway, so she became a teacher in 1838. In April 1839, she came back to Brontë Parsonage. So less than a year.
She tried.
She did the best she could, but like, Emily's gonna Emily.
And people think this woman wrote a romance. I'm sorry. It's not that kind of romance, people.
We will talk about this later when we're doing our Jane Eyre discussion on Patreon. But I like books, movies, TV shows. I like things where lots of weird shit is happening. That's Ancore. And when I read Wuthering Heights, I was just like, this book is amazing.
I love Wuthering Heights. I just know what it is.
Yeah, no, it's just like
this is a soap opera. None of these people like each other.
Everyone is terrible. Like, fucked up things keep happening. So the fact that it's being Wuthering Heights, like this week that you're listening to this podcast, people, that it's like the movie, it's like the great love story of our time. It's like, bitch, what?
Do you need therapy?
Is a fucked up book. Like 1/8 of it is like two people quasi in a love story, sort of, and then death happens.
50% of it is a random guy laying in a bed listening to an old lady talk at him.
Yeah, like this is, it's like, anyway, so the fact that anyone thinks that it's a love story is bananas. And also it's just like, this is who wrote it. Of course it's this fucked up. Like, all she does is live in her head, burrow in the ground. Like, she does not have experience with romance. She has experience with the Byronic ideal of romance. And as we all know, that is not romance either. That is sex at best. But that is where, like, myself as like person, like, I like books and things where fucked up stuff happens. I also like murder mysteries. I don't tend to read a romance novel. That's not my vibe. I read Wuthering Heights and I was like, this book fucks. I like this book. So like, I like it, and that's how you know it's not a romance.
I am a romance girly. I am a dark romance girly, and thus Jane Eyre.
Yeah. Several of the Brontë sisters' books, including Anne's books, have people who go off to be governesses and fucked up things happen. So like, we're just seeing the life experience occur to give them that experience.
Also, religious people are a pain in the ass. Like, that is kind of her vibe.
Okay, so now we're in 1839. So, remember, Charlotte has her friends. There's Ellen, not to be confused with Helen from Jane Eyre. Ellen's brother proposed marriage to her, and she declined. So they're not, I feel like she declined because she's like, would that mean I would have to leave my house? In which case, no.
I do wonder if she wanted a great romance and just never got one. Like, she liked the idea of romance, but she had a very firm idea in her head of what that would be like. And a practical marriage is not going to be it.
Exactly. This would be like a transactional thing. But yeah, so I could see like this would be a way like, oh, maybe this way, like I could have. We've seen like other people in history who are like, okay, like this will be a way that I can get money and help my family. Like sometimes people do these transactional marriages because those reasons, but that's not her vibe. That's not what she's into. Although I will say, potentially this is part of why she declined. Later that same year, she wrote a piece called Farewell to Angria. So Angria was her part of the schism of the Confederacy of.
She grew out of her fandom.
She did. So she wrote this piece that was about her growing dependency on the fantasy world, fearing for her sanity. With the sense she was losing grip on reality, she made the decision to set aside her fantasy world. So
instead she wrote Junior.
We'll get into the circumstances of that in a bit. And now for a quick advertising break. Reaching your weight loss goals doesn't have to mean completely changing the way you live your life. What if you could make healthy progress with a treatment plan that included medication, access to 24/7 support, nutrition tips, and tools for tracking movement, hydration, and sleep, all personalized to go at your pace? That's weight loss by Hers. Through Hers, you're connected with a medical provider who determines if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment plan is personalized to support you in reaching your goals. Plus, you can access a range of treatment options like oral medication kits or GLP-1 injectables. They even offer the convenience of 100% online care with licensed providers on the other side who learn your story and create a personalized plan to deliver healthy progress you can maintain. So no more yo-yoing, just steady results. Feel like your best self again. Visit forhers.com/vulgar to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's forhers.com/vulgar, forhers.com/vulgar. Weight loss by Hers is not available everywhere. Compounded drug products are not approved or evaluated for safety, effectiveness, or quality by the FDA. Prescription required. See website for full details, important safety information, and restrictions. Actual price depends on product and plan purchased.
Yes, online shopping is quite literally at our fingertips, but that doesn't mean it's always simple to buy. Whether it's trying to remember one of a million different logins so you can actually place your order, or getting almost all the way through checkout before realizing your card is nowhere near you, there are many hiccups that can get between you and placing that order. Which is why it's such a relief when you see that purple pay button that has all of your information saved, making checkout as simple as a tap of your screen. That iconic purple Shop Pay button is why Shopify has the best converting checkout on the planet, meaning less carts going abandoned and more sales going to you. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Thrive Cosmetics, Gymshark, and Allbirds, to brands just getting started. And they're not just great at converting sales. If people haven't heard about your brand yet, Shopify can help you find your customers with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns. And they have world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. Tackle all of those important tasks from one place, making your life easier and your business operations smoother. See less carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
The world of Sonic the Hedgehog has been thrust into a not-so-dark, not-so-stormy hard-boiled detective story that probably nobody saw coming. Follow Sonic and the intrepid Chaotix Detective Agency as they take on their biggest case yet. This high-flying, action-packed adventure will take them across the world fighting for every clue they can find.
Tuck and roll!
It's one heck of a tale, which is good, because this story might be the only thing that can save their lives.
Wait! No. Well, if that's all, I can just dispose of you.
Wait, what?
All will be revealed in Sonic the Hedgehog presents The Chaotix Case Files. Listen now, wherever you get your podcasts.
When the chaotics are on the case.
And we're back. So she's like, okay, I can't live in this fantasy world anymore. Like, I'm gonna, like, the difference between Charlotte and Anne is kind of like, again, like, without the same experience of trauma, like, Anne is just kind of like, I'm gonna get an education, I'm gonna get a job. And Charlotte's like, I'm gonna get an education and a job, but she just, like, can't make it work because she, like, has so much trauma. Anyway, so she gets a job, but also Charlotte, importantly, hates teaching, hates children, and so she gets a job as a governess, and guess what? She hates it. Because she hates children, she hates teaching, she hates being away from home.
She's having to work.
Yeah. What the quote, well, just what this says here is that she felt like her employers treated her like a servant. It's like,
Because she was.
yeah, but I feel like that's a bit, isn't Jane Eyre kind of she's hired to take care of the little French girl, right?
She is hired as a governess.
Yeah.
Doesn't stay that way, but I mean, she does. But very, very little time in the story is spent on her actually engaging with the child she is meant to be all but raising.
Okay, so then she just kind of bounced from job to job, just being governess for various different places. She's working for this family called the Sidgwick family as a governess to their son John, who once threw a Bible at her. An incident that may have inspired the section of Jane Eyre in which a person called John throws a book at Jane Eyre.
That's her cousin.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever. You write what you got.
It's like, well, one time someone threw a book at me, so I know what it's like to have a book thrown at you, so I'm going to put that in my book as well.
I'm going to write a spoiled child, and it's going to be you, John. And when you read it, you'll know.
So Charlotte, like, again, I think this was Elizabeth Gaskell later was going on and talking to people like, what was Charlotte like? So the Sidgwick family were like, Charlotte was the worst governess we ever had. She often went to bed all day, leaving the heavily pregnant Mrs. Sidgwick to look after the children, where it's like, Charlotte, you had one job, which was to look after the children, and you are in bed all day because you have, like, illness. Anyway, she was not suited for this job, obviously. Anyway, she got another job as another governess in another family. She hated it. Charlotte.
If only she had another skill that she could eventually fall back on.
Yeah, no, exactly. So Charlotte is, like, out there trying to get, like, she's trying to get work to support the family, which is, like, what needs to happen. Because
she knows she has to do it. She doesn't have to like it, though.
Yeah. Well, she doesn't like it, but also to the extent that she just, like, can't make herself do something she doesn't like. Whereas Anne, I don't know, I think my bias is coming out, but I do like a youngest sister called Anne. Anne is just, like, again, like, she's not carrying the same trauma with her, but Anne, like, can actually function in the world. So, like, thank God there's someone like this in this family, because she gets that, like, they need income, like, quite a bit. So she knew she had to earn a living. The father had no private income. When he died, the parsonage would revert to the church. So, like, they wouldn't even still be able to live there. And so I think they all knew this, but Anne was the one who's able to actually function in the world. So she was just, I think she probably looked at Charlotte and Emily and she's like, it's up to me. Sorry, Branwell's still there. By this point, I think he's just drunken ne'er-do-well.
And there he stays.
He was a nice brother, friend for them in the Glass Confederacy era. And then he became an adult and just, he's bringing nothing to the table. Anyway, so Anne, was like, okay, I'm going to go be a governess. again, near Murfield. Like, shout out to Murfield. So she tried being a governess. The children were assholes, but the parents were like, no, we're raising them free range, so you can never punish them. And eventually she's just like, fuck this. And so it didn't work out. She returned like a magnet. She returns back to home with the family. But her unhappy time with this family is believed to be the inspiration behind her novel, Agnes Grey, for anyone who knows her novel, Agnes Grey. And then Anne returns to Haworth. She forms a friendship so her father has a new curate who's like a hot young hunk, whose name is William Waitman. He was 25. I think she's like a bit younger than that, like probably like 19 or so by now. He was handsome. He was friendly. He had a flirtatious personality. I love this detail. Upon learning that none of the Brontë sisters had ever received a Valentine's card, he wrote cards and poems to each of them. So this could have turned into something nice until he died of cholera.
I mean, when in doubt, just kill them from something.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Like, the tuberculosis it's gonna show up, but like we had typhus, we've had cancer, now cholera. Anyway, so Anne takes another governess position. She is determined to make a success of this, to become well-liked. And actually the girls who she was watching over became her lifelong friends. And I do like this as a little detail about Anne. She developed an interest in geology. She liked to collect semi-precious stones. She's in common with Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire. And in her novel, she includes discussion of semi-precious stones because that is her hyperfixation. She's just like, this is a nice hobby anyone could do, men or women, collecting stones. Okay, so I'll tell you what happens, and you can probably guess how it's going to go. So 1842, Charlotte traveled with Emily to Brussels to a boarding school run by Constantine Heger and his wife, Claire. So both siblings were student teachers. So Charlotte taught English and Emily eventually taught music in return for board and lodging. I picture Emily teaching sort of like interpretive dance, like teaching music, just like playing music, and she just dances to it. And
or she just picks up an instrument and starts making noises with it.
And just kind of like scream, singing, sort of like Yoko Ono.
Great. Oh, Captain, my captain.
Anyway, so one of the reasons why they went there to do this was they wanted to attain some skills so that they could open a school of their own.
At the house.
Yes.
Solving all their problems.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like, if this wasn't your bingo card, you'd mark off like, oh, okay, women decide to open a school. Like, yep, that happens in every episode this season. So they're like learning skills about how to run a school. Charlotte enjoyed her time there, partially because she had a close relationship with Constantine Heger. Some people suspect she might have been in love with him. But it's the same sort of thing where like the letters that everyone writes to everyone are always so passionate. It's like, how can you tell like people who are in love from just people who just really like a person? Anyway, so they're just like, things seem to be, I'm shocked that Emily is in Brussels, a foreign country. I guess she found places to like run around and climb trees. So she's doing fine, I guess. But then they were called back to the parsonage. It's the hellmouth. Like, you can never escape.
What part of Glasstown was hers? Because she might like Belgium because of the whole Napoleon thing. Like, she might be able to fanfic her way out of that one.
Oh, that's true. Just like imagine that she's living in Glasstown. Yeah. Anyway, so their aunt Elizabeth, the one who had like helped raise them, died, and so they were brought back. Now, I don't have how she died of, but I'm going to guess tuberculosis because this disease starts spreading around this house that they all live in. So Elizabeth is dead. Charlotte, she was so traumatized by her mother dying, her sisters dying. Like, this just like really triggers her. And then also, this was around the same time that the hunk William Waitman died of cholera. And then also Charlotte's friend Mary Taylor's sister Martha died of cholera. It's just like, it's a lot of death for one person to handle who's like already only sort of barely hanging on in general.
Yeah.
So they went back. Emily stayed, but Charlotte returned to Brussels to take up a teaching post at the school. This was the first time she'd ever traveled alone. She found the experience, quote, alarming. Her novel, Villette, I guess, has a similar situation occur. So I don't know. I think like she did okay in Brussels, and maybe Emily did too because they were together. But now that she's by herself, she's struggling a bit more. She's feeling homesick. Her attachment to Constantine is anyway. So she like became jealous of Constantine's wife. Like things are just getting intense, and so she inevitably returns to the Brontë parsonage. But her time there with those people inspired, as I mentioned, her novel Villette, but also she has a novel called The Professor. And I think Constantine is the model for the character in The Professor. And then she's like, okay, girls, okay, Brontes, like, let's open our boarding school. It was advertised as the Mrs. Bronte's establishment for the board and education of a limited number of young ladies. But no one really wanted to go because it was in the middle of the Yorkshire Moors.
And they didn't have any connections because everywhere that they taught, they made enemies.
Yeah, so they did not attract any pupils and the project was abandoned. So Anne is just like, okay, I will single-handedly keep this family afloat. I'm the only person capable of functioning in the world. I will do this. I'm Anne. So she went back to where she'd been a governess, and she pulled her strings because she got along with a girl, she got along with that family, and she got a position for Branwell to tutor the son of the family.
Because that's what you want, Branwell around children.
Oh, what you don't is Branwell around the wife of the household who he started having an affair with.
Very normal Brontë behavior.
Yeah, so Branwell was, guess what, fired. And just due to kind of all...
Because he didn't even do it well. He got caught.
No, he had an affair with a wife. It became apparent. He was fired. And then Anne just resigned because she's like, I can't.
I want it to be normal. Please. Just one of you.
So I love this, like, this story. So they're just like at the parsonage. The dad is still there, by the way, like being the curate and whatever, but like getting older. And they know that like none of them have any money or jobs or anyway. So Emily, so 1844, Emily likes writing like they all do. And so she went through all the poems she'd written and she was just like, as a like little project for herself, she was just copying them into a new notebooks. They were all in like one book together. And then Charlotte discovered these notebooks and she was just like, oh my God, you write poems? I write poems. Let's publish them and make money. Emily was understandably furious at this invasion of her privacy. It's like, because it's her private thoughts and whatever. But I understand that. And she's like, no, I only write for myself. Like, I don't want to publish these. But then Anne came out and she's like, oh my God, what? I also write poems. They secretly had all been writing poems and not telling each other.
I mean, after the schism, I can understand why they were keeping it apart.
Yeah, exactly. So now they're like together again. So they're like, oh, we can, like, wait a minute, we all write poems. And so Emily was like, they're like, okay, well, what if we write poems? And Emily's like, no, I don't want people to know about me. I'm a private hermit weirdo. And they're like, okay, well, what if we publish them, but we won't use our names? And so that's where they each came up with a sort of gender neutral pseudonym. But the same first letter is their names. So Charlotte became Currer Bell. And Emily became Ellis Bell, and Anne became Acton Bell. So they published this book that's called Poems by Currer, Ellis, and Acton Bell. So it's like we're three men who write poems and we're siblings. Emily and Anne were insistent that they didn't want people to know it was them. Charlotte was less worried about that. Anyway, but the thing is, they're like, yeah, let's publish our poems. But this is how this worked. It's just like we're three random weird hermits, sisters in the moors. No publisher was like, great, we'll pay you to do this. So they themselves had to pay to have it published.
Because they had no platform.
Yeah. Much like authors today struggle to get books sold. So they did, so not really self-published, they paid a company to publish it for them.
They couldn't start a podcast to start a long con to get a book published, like Anne did.
Not everybody has that option.
I would have paid so much money to listen to their podcast.
I think I'm going to say Anne Brontë could probably have figured it out.
Anne Brontë would have been the producer. Emily, she just sort of clipped a lavalier onto Emily and just recorded her like mad ravings. And then she'd ask Charlotte questions, and Charlotte would have just given her like one word responses, but then gotten really mad and explained like a whole podcast worth of things. And it would have been chaos. And I love it.
I like the concept of just putting a microphone on Emily and just like her talking out loud to herself as she wanders the moors. Or Emily could be like, let's go walk with Emily. Like, if you go to the Brontë parsonage, you can see there's like the walking. It's like, here's where Emily liked to walk. Like, you can see where she went. So I could see doing like a vlog. It would have to be Anne secretly filming Emily.
Exactly.
Where she goes and stuff. Anyway, so they published this book of poetry. 2 copies were sold. That because no one knew who they were. It's like, oh, here's a book of poems by 3 random men.
Which is why you don't write a memoir when no one knows who you are.
Yeah. So, this plan to like make money for their family, not doing well so far. Anyway, their father had various health issues, as I mentioned, but one of them, as a lot of older people have, he got cataracts, which is like an eye thing.
Everybody gets cataracts eventually. That's what my eye doctor is telling me.
Yeah. No, my mother has had cataract surgery, and like every single person she knows is like, oh, when I had my cataract surgery, it's just, this happens if you live long enough, seemingly.
Eventually your lens gets cloudy.
So, but in Regency era, there was not, they just did the same as when they did cataract surgery in like ancient Egypt, basically, is just kind of like, okay, we're just going to like put these pokey things in your eyeballs. And then they couldn't like do stitches or anything. So the way that you recovered from cataract surgery was you just had to be in a dark room for like a month and just not see light while your eye slowly healed. And that was when Charlotte was like, I'm going to write Jane Eyre.
It is time.
While her father was recuperating in a dark room and she was like helping take care of him, she was like, I'm going to pivot to fiction. And the book I'm going to write is going to involve a blind man.
I mean, he eventually becomes blind. And it's not because, natural aging.
No, he became blind for
chaos.
On the Patreon podcast, we'll talk about that. But I do like that Charlotte, we've seen her like she's struggling to like make these jobs work, to do stuff. But when she's just kind of forced for 1 month to just care for her father, and she just kind of has to, like, her regular routines have been disrupted, she's like, well, I will take this month. It's like, I don't know, like me, like when I was over the Christmas holiday, I was like, like I'm done my book. It hasn't come out. Like I'm caught up on the podcast. What I'm going to do? I'm like, I'm going to take up knitting. Like, it's just sort of like when you have a finite period of time, it's like, I'll try something different. Actually, but her first novel that she finished was The Professor. And so Charlotte was like, okay, maybe we'll make more money publishing fiction than publishing a random book of poetry set in our random fantasy realm.
When fantasy wasn't really a thing yet.
Yeah. So her novel, The Professor. So she was like, okay, well, let's each submit. It's funny that they're like, let's publish a book of poetry that all of us did. Then she's like, I'm writing fiction now. You two write novels also. Then we'll submit all 3. Like the family is so just like codependent. Like,
we're doing this together.
Here's what's happening. We're all novelists now.
I've decided to be a novelist, which means you're writing a book.
Which means we are all now novelists. And Branwell is like, me too. Like,
we're like, no, not you.
Branwell, are you still in this story? He is. And he honestly did try to...
Branwell, go drink something.
But as much as like Anne Bronte's books don't have like that spark of Charlotte and Emily, like Branwell's writing is just like, good job. Nice try. Here's a gold star, Branwell. You put sentences together.
You know what words are.
Anyway, so in this kind of like codependent style, so the 3 of them wrote their novels. So Charlotte wrote The Professor, Anne wrote Agnes Grey, and Emily wrote Wuthering Heights.
Straight off the bat, just if I have to write one book, it's going to be this one. It's going to piss people off for the rest of history.
And like the format of it is going to be like, oh, is this the main character of the book? Yes, until she dies. very early on. Then
Well, it's also a frame story somehow.
yeah,
And like she went deep into like all of the devices.
if you're going to write one book, like she put everything in it that you could put into one book. So anyway, so they all wrote their books, and then Charlotte submitted them all together to the London publisher Henry Colburn, being like, "Dear sir, here are 3." Like, imagine how big these are. They didn't have typewriters. Like Wuthering Heights, handwritten. Like, here's 3 gigantic stacks of paper. So she was like, "These tales." This is the letter she wrote with them, because Henry Colburn was like, "What is this giant parcel?" So she was like, 3 tales, each occupying a volume and capable of being published together or separately as thought most advisable. And she's like, "And just so you know, we have previously been published in
Oh, query letters.
poetry that we paid for, that 2 people bought." Anyway, and so these were sent like as like Currer, Ellis, and Acton Bell. Like, "Hello, we are 3 men, and here are our novels." And here's the kicker. So Charlotte is behind all of this. She's the one who wrote The Professor. And the publisher was like, "You know what? I like Wuthering Heights. I like Agnes Grey. Don't like The Professor." So
So like, fine, I'll write the greatest novel ever written.
So she's like, "Okay, fine. I'll write Jane Eyre." And I think this is when the cataract surgery was happening. Anyway, so actually I like this fuck you energy, because this publisher was like, "Okay, I like these 2, but not this one." And Charlotte's like, "Really? Okay, I'll write the greatest novel ever written, and I'll send it to your rival publisher," which she did.
Which is the correct way to publishing.
Yeah. So she sent Jane Eyre to Smith, Elder and Company, and it was published 6 weeks later. Those 6 weeks were just spent typing, apparently.
Dang. Put it on the press.
So Jane Eyre comes out, and we'll talk about this. Again, listeners, join my Patreon if you want to hear us go deep on a discussion of Jane Eyre. But one of the things is that it's first person, and that was really unusual for books.
Mm-hmm.
So many books right now are written like, "I, Jane Eyre, walk down the street," whatever. Like, but usually it's like a young woman called Jane walked down the street. Like, that's how most books were. But hers was like, "I'm Jane Eyre, and here's my story." Like, that was shocking.
Wuthering Heights was like told a person telling a random person the story of people that he doesn't even know. And then Jane Eyre comes along. It's like, "This is my trauma.
Yeah.
You must listen to all of it."
And I think it's interesting because the Brontes, myself, until recently, I couldn't remember which Bronte wrote which thing. But I think it's a common thing for people to like Jane Eyre or to like Wuthering Heights and be like, "Oh, what else did this author write?" And you go to the other books to read them. You're like, Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre, like the same person. If you're expecting the same thing in both, you're not going to get it. Like you respect these books in different ways. But like if someone expects it to be similar, like they are not.
Because they hear Bronte, it must be the same. It's like, no.
But this
Very
is
different energy.
But this is part of their branding, because it's like, it's interesting that it's 3 siblings who are all well-known authors now. But it's like, yeah, that's because they did everything together. Like they wrote novels at the same time. They submitted them at the same time. Like they've never been, it's not like one of them wrote a book. And so it's like Hilary Duff was on Disney Channel and Haley Duff showed up. It's like one of them paved the way. It's like the 3 of them are like, we are 3. We are all novelists.
I'm writing a book, you're writing a book. This is how it works.
But that's where people think of them. Like even this podcast episode, it's like the Brontes, like because they're a collective. I could never do an episode just about one of them because they're not distinct people, like they're so codependent.
Well, and they're basically shut-ins. Like there's not and once again, you brought me onto an episode where the scores are going to be low, but the story is going to be high quality.
Yeah, when we get to the scandal, I haven't thought it through, but like I do think they have significance.
Well, yeah.
But how much scandal can you get up to when you are a shut-in?
I mean, the wolves have very, very firm opinions on Emily.
So Jane Eyre, love this. I love the energy of this. Like, so she wrote Jane Eyre as a fuck you to the first publisher, partially. She sent it to the new publisher who's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. You're going to publish it 6 weeks from now." And it was an immediate success. Like the guy read it and he was just like, "Fuck yes, this book is great." And it received favorable reviews. And then when this came out by the other publisher was like, "Oh shit, what? A Bronte book came out? Well, I have these other 2. So then he published the other 2. And the publisher of Wuthering Heights and tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Brontë put on them like, this is like saying like, oh, these authors are related to Currer Bell, the author of Jane Eyre, this bestseller. So Jane Eyre sold the best of all. Wuthering Heights did very well because it's so dramatic. Agnes Grey is currently the least famous of these books, but also it sold okay, but Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre were the ones that everyone's like, holy shit, read these books.
And that's in their lifetimes.
Yeah.
After their lifetimes, it's hard to tell who's the most famous, but they're like they rise and fall based on trends, but they don't go away.
Yeah, Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights came out and they were bestseller. It's kind of like Frankenstein. It's like it comes out and it's never out of print and it's never not popular. Like people have always heard of it. Like it's just like, oh hi, I just read this book and it's a classic and it will always be. And
I mean, even now TikTok is having massive fights about what Wuthering Heights is really about and what kind of story it's telling. And that says so much about the kind of stories that we're dealing with here. Like people have firm opinions in a year where a lot is going on. And they have to take the time out to go, no, you're wrong about Wuthering Heights. I am one of those people that can do that.
And that is why you're on this podcast, because I needed someone with this Brontë knowledge. But like these books were so popular when they first came out. I wanted to just clarify. So Agnes Grey was the first book that Anne wrote. And the books did well. And so the Brontes were like, amazing, let's write more novels and make more money. So then Anne wrote a second novel.
And never teach another child again.
Thank God. Like, you know, that's good for them and good for the children who don't have to be traumatized by them as teachers.
It's the real service to humanity.
So these books are coming out, like they're coming out, like the Bell Brothers books, like, you know, because the Ten of Wildfell Hall comes out, and there's just being rumors that like this is all one person. Like there's not three Bell brothers, it's just one person. And so at one point, Anne and Charlotte went to London. Emily obviously didn't go because she doesn't. You know, Emily was running in the fields somewhere and couldn't be found.
Because they needed to talk to their publisher, and their publisher needed to respect them as people.
Yeah. Emily didn't come because like that's just better for the situation. But they went to the publisher to like be like, it's not one person. Like the Bell brothers are various people. And the increasing popularity of these books by the Bell brothers led to new interest in poems by Currer, Ellis, and Acton Bell. So that publisher was like, oh, I have these poems. I'm going to republish them. But guess what? It still sold poorly. Like their poems, you know, Brontë stans love their poems. They love their like childhood stories about the like fantastical realm with fake Napoleon in it and stuff. But what people really love about their work are their novels. So Charlotte, she wrote Jane Eyre. Oh no, she already wrote The Professor. So and then she starts her third novel. The Professor has not been published yet. Jane Eyre has been published. The Professor was refused by that other publisher, and now she's writing a new novel called Shirley. But the writing process is a couple of things happen. Tuberculosis related. So
the tuberculosis begins.
So in September, so this is 1848, Branwell died, probably of tuberculosis, following a long descent into alcoholism and drug addiction.
I mean, it could be syphilis. We don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately he died of tuberculosis, and he probably also had other things going on. At his funeral, so he died, and then the funeral was a week later. And at the funeral, Emily caught a severe cold that developed into an inflammation of the lungs and accelerated her pre-existing tuberculosis.
Because as we know from watching Vulgar Beast Theater, tuberculosis doesn't kill you on the initial infection. It just slowly eats your lungs over the years. Actually,
can we just have like a tuberculosis moment to... Okay. So if we could just explain. So for instance, tuberculosis. When I think of tuberculosis, which AKA consumption, I think of like in the movie Moulin Rouge, Nicole Kidman's character, every now and then, like she coughs blood into a handkerchief, but she seems fine. And then she suddenly has, like you can have tuberculosis for years. And it just kind of like flares. It like goes up and down.
Okay. Tuberculosis is a single infection.
Okay.
It's a single infection that scars your lungs so horribly that they slowly wither away and die. Without lungs, you cannot live. So basically, the scar tissue just starts to eat up all your lungs. So your lungs are inflatable, obviously. That's the whole point of them. And they have these little tiny lobes, these little tiny bubbles in them. The bubbles are where the oxygen goes into your bloodstream. So the two ways that your lungs withering away kills you is that it's hard for the lungs to expand and close. And those little lobules just get cut off to the point where you no longer have lobules that convert the oxygen to your bloodstream.
So like you have tuberculosis, but people can have it for a really long time. It's because it's just like a slow wasting disease.
No, tuberculosis, like you get so tuberculosis is like a cold. You get it and then it dies and then you're no longer sick. But you have already hurt your lungs. And because of the scar tissue on your lungs, that scar tissue, like it's the scarification slowly over time expands. So it's not that you have a disease anymore. It's that your lungs are broken and like it starts taking on water. It starts doing all of these things where your lungs no longer work well. So when they say consumption, they mean like it's literally consuming your lungs over time. And it's not the disease, it's the after effects of the disease.
Lung tuberculosis.
Yeah. So it's no longer like a virus or a bacterial infection. Now it's just your lungs are slowly dying.
So people with tuberculosis, like in the movie Tombstone, where Doc Holliday goes to like a hot, dry place because that's good for his tuberculosis. Or people in like England would go to, I don't know, Spain or Greece or something. It's like, go to a hot, dry place. That's good for your tuberculosis. That's just because it's easier to breathe.
It's good for your lungs. It's good for what remains of your lungs so that they're supported. It's not too wet. You're not likely to get another infection because like a chest cold is terrible when your lungs are slowly dying.
That's the thing. So Emily got a cold at the funeral, which exacerbated her tuberculosis. Yeah. A worse place to be with tuberculosis than in the Yorkshire moors drinking cemetery water?
Yeah, there aren't a whole lot. There aren't a whole lot of worse places than anywhere in England with tuberculosis. And then you add the Yorkshire moors with the cemetery water and probably not enough protein. Probably not enough anything.
Well, if knowing that like, hot, dry climates are good for the lungs and sort of like this damp cold where they live and where they're like compelled to always return to is just that's not great for people.
And what was good for her was the amount of exercise she was getting. Like the wandering of the moors, that's great.
That's what let her live as long as she did, Emily. Yeah. So Emily, her condition was worsening and Charlotte was like, please let me call you a doctor. All of Charlotte's like sister dying trauma is popping up because Branwell just died too. But Emily's just like, no, I don't have any doctors. I don't believe in pharmaceuticals. Anyway, but as she got closer to death, her final words to Charlotte were, if you send for a doctor, I will see him now. But she died.
Yeah, there's not a lot you could do at that point.
Yeah. So Emily had been so weak and like she'd been staying on a sofa in the living room of the parsonage. And her dog, I mentioned, like Emily loved her dogs. There's these beautiful like pencil drawings she drew of her dogs. Her dog was called Keeper. Keeper was lying with her as she died. And so Branwell died. And then Emily gets sick and then Emily dies. And this Anne, who up until now she avoided those early childhood traumas. This deeply affects Anne. It deeply affects Charlotte, but this is the first time Anne has like faced.
Anne finally gets it.
Yeah. Anyway, so the grief really affected her physical health. So does just like everything. She fell into like depression. It affected her health, and then she got influenza, which led to tuberculosis.
Yeah, people underestimate the flu because like we live with it a lot now, but when you don't have Mucinex and you don't have, indoor heating
or just anything to keep your fluids up or anything like, so she she falls ill and then tuberculosis also. So actually, can I ask you again, tuberculosis corner, how is it transmitted? Is that just like being like spit from a person with tuberculosis? Who's in the like contagious phase?
It's highly contagious. One of the biggest things about it is that it can be like covert, like you don't know that you have it, and you can still be transmitting it.
Well, just the fact that like all these people in this household all got tuberculosis one after another, I feel like they might have given it to each other.
Yeah, coughs and sneezes. Like it's a lot like COVID.
Yeah. So if you're like nursing your loved one who is sick and they have tuberculosis, then you could chance it because there's no face masks and whatever.
There's not even the germ theory of disease. They don't know how they're getting sick. They just know that they are.
Oh no, bring up the leeches, etc. So Anne she's grieving, she's sick. A doctor told her she had little hope of recovery, but she was just like, screw that. I'm Anne Brontë.
I survive.
I, like my sisters, have now experienced trauma and I will see through it. So unlike Emily, Anne took all of the recommended medicines and followed the advice she was given because that's the Anne Brontë way.
Because other people are maybe trustworthy.
Yeah, no, so she takes other people's advice. She's not just like, oh, the crows in the woods told me to run with the wolves. And she's like, medicine, great, thank you, expert people. Anyway, so she got a bit better and decided to visit Scarborough to see if the fresh sea air might be helpful. But she went there and like all her symptoms came back. Like it became clear that she was also going to die. And then in a very pragmatic Brontë way, she asked Charlotte, like, do you want me to come home and die? Or would it be okay if I die here in Scarborough? And a doctor was like, you're going to die pretty much right away. So probably you should stay here. Anyway, so as she was told she's going to die, so she expressed her love and concern for Charlotte, and whispered for Charlotte to take courage. And then she died. So in terms of the Brontes, like, and their deaths, like they're all in their like, she's 29 and she's the youngest one. The other ones they're all like under age 35, all these dying Brontes. Like a lot has happened, but they're all quite young still. So Anne died age 29. Charlotte is the only Brontes left are Charlotte and the dad. Dad still around, Patrick. So Charlotte turned to her writing as a way to deal with her grief. And so she finished, remember, she was writing her third book, Shirley, and then all these deaths happened. I don't know. Have you read Shirley? I imagine.
I haven't. I read the two big ones in 7th grade. Mm-hmm. And then I just didn't stop rereading Jane Eyre. I found my personality. I embedded upon it, and then I just kept it there.
No, fair enough. So Shirley, I think it's interesting. She was writing it, and then like everyone in her family died, and then she finished writing it. So I wonder what that book is like. The novel's reception was not as enthusiastic as that of Jane Eyre. So in terms of this reminds me a bit of my personal fandom is Agatha Christie's murder mysteries. And so Agatha Christie somewhat famously had a complete mental breakdown collapse. She like ran off under a fake name and no one knew where she was. And then she came back and she like worked really hard to like rebuild her life and stuff. But her publisher was like, "Bitch, you have a book due." So she wrote this book called The Mystery of the Blue Train, I think. And Agatha Christie always said, this was my least favorite book I ever wrote. I hated that I had to write it. It's such a bad book. Like it reminds me of this terrible time in my life. And from then on, she always wrote one book ahead. So in case something happened, she had a book she could turn in. But I wonder if Shirley is like that for Charlotte, where it's just like she was going through so much in her life. Like the book she couldn't put her attention and intensity into that book because she was dealing with so much. So, and that book has never been as well. It was at that time, it was not as enthusiastically received. And it doesn't have the longevity of Villette or Jane Eyre.
Yeah, she only has one other book really that people look back on.
So Charlotte was her sister's executor. And this is where the like myth of the Brontes kind of starts to develop. Like at first it's like the three, at this point, no one knew that it was them. Like it was still like these Bell brothers. But various ways, it becomes apparent that like it was these people, partially because the characters were so clearly based on people from around the Brontë parsonage. People are like, wait a minute. If one of these books was written by one of the Brontes and they're all siblings and the letters of the names, wait a minute, did the anyway. So eventually they figure out that Charlotte was the author of these books. And then she wrote an explanatory introduction to Wuthering Heights, like the new release of it, to try to make it less shocking to the public. She suppressed the republication of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall because she thought it was shocking. I'm not sure. But the fact that this wasn't republished had a negative effect on Anne's popularity as a novelist because her books kind of weren't as available as the other ones. This is a controversial decision that she made. I think she's just trying to sort of control the narrative of themselves and their lives and their work. And it's kind of like they were the three girls and now there's just her. She's like, well, I don't want to be a novelist if they're not also novelists. She discreetly revealed herself to her publisher and her friends as the author of Jane Eyre. And so she started to visit London and she started to meet some other like lady writers. This is where she meets Elizabeth Gaskell, another author called Harriet Martineau. And I will mention that Charlotte and Harriet Martineau, they shared an interest in racial relations and the abolitionist movement. So just so you know, Charlotte is on that side of that issue, the good side. And then, so Villette was her last novel to be published in her lifetime, which returned to the first-person perspective.
And that one was popular in like that one. It's not Jane Eyre popular, but it's like that one is still talked about, and it was.
Yeah, I think it was just Shirley is the one kind of like that was kind of a miss, but Villette, it's like, oh, she's back to form. And shortly before the publication of Villette, Charlotte, who I think at this point is like in her mid-late 30s, she received a proposal of marriage from the Reverend Arthur Bell Nichols, an Irishman from County Antrim in her father's native Ulster. He had been her father's curate. Remember there's that other guy, the hunk, who was the curate? So the father just keeps hiring these like hunk curates. Anyway, he had been in love with Charlotte for a long time. She initially refused to marry him. Her father objected to the marriage partially because of his poor financial status. But I'd be like, Patrick, like, what financial status is Charlotte going to have?
But there would be no one to take care of him.
I guess.
This man is fundamentally selfish.
Patrick Brontë. Anyway, so her friend Elizabeth Gaskell thought that like this might be good for Charlotte to like have the structure in her life that a marriage would bring. So she got like friend of a friend to try to help out this guy with his finances. Anyway, eventually Charlotte accepted his proposal and they got married. Now, in a real sort of narcissistic parent move, which makes me think of Victoria Beckham, Patrick Brontë had intended to give Charlotte away, but at the last minute decided he could not.
Could have been Branwell.
This is a real Branwell type move from Patrick. So Charlotte had to go to the church without him because her father was not there. It was her lifelong friend and former teacher from Roehead School, Miss Wooler, who gave her away. They went for honeymoon in Ireland. And you mentioned like, well, who's going to take care of the father if she gets married? It's like, don't worry, they live in the same house. Charlotte found a way to get married, but not have to leave the only house she could ever live in. So it's her husband, and her dad all in that house. And so she became pregnant soon after her wedding. But I will just mention, like, we know Charlotte is like, she's small, like she's had all these health problems. Like it would be, and she's also in her like late 30s. Like nowadays, this would be a high risk pregnancy. And in the cemetery
in
water,
the wars.
like this is not, things are not going to go well. Spoilers. So she became pregnant soon after her wedding. Her health declined rapidly. And then she and the unborn child both died March 31st, 1855, 3 weeks before her 39th birthday. So it's possible that, like, one theory, like, I think she had all these health problems anyway, but her death might have been caused from complications from severe morning sickness, like just sort of the
dehydration.
yeah, just the absolute dehydration. It's like, oh, quick, drink more cemetery water. Like, that's not going to help. Anyway, so her first novel, The Professor, the one that the first publisher didn't want, was published posthumously. And then 2 years after she died is when Elizabeth Gaskell wrote this biography that's called like The Life of Charlotte Brontë. And that's where the Brontë myth really took off. So like their books were popular in their lifetime. Then this book came out about how interesting they are. And then the books became even more popular. And then they've stayed popular. And just a bit about the legacy. So the Brontë Society. So she died in 1855. The biography came out in 1857. And then 40 years later, the Brontë Society was founded. Like that's how early on there was enough fans of them that like they started a society. So they wanted to promote interest in the Brontë family and their works.
Also a deeply Victorian thing is the society of whatever thing you mildly are interested in.
Well, and that's the thing with the Brontes is that too, like in terms of this and like the Regency era and stuff, like in terms of like the eras themselves, I saw somebody was describing there's kind of the Regency era, and then like 1830 to 1840 is kind of like when the Brontes their books were coming out, and then Queen Victoria, then the Victorians take over. So the Brontes were kind of in this like in-between phase where it's like end of Regency, but just pre-Victorian. So it's kind of like an era without a name. There's sort of this decade is where they fit in. So yeah. So once the Victorians were there, they're just, well, and of course the Victorians would love them. The Victorians love goth, like overwrought, like all the drama.
Yeah.
Like
absolute chaos.
Well, the Victorians were the ones who got really obsessed with like Mary Queen of Scots and the murder of Rizzio and stuff. Like they love this shit.
But not in their society, just in like people that in history and in like, oh, well, they're dead now, so it's fine.
Yeah, now we can celebrate.
If it had been happening during the Victorian era, no, obviously not.
Exactly. So the parsonage, the Haworth parsonage, where the Brontes, this says where the Brontes grew up, but I would say like where the Brontes only ever lived, was bought by Sir James Roberts and gifted to the Brontë Society in 1928, and it opened as the Brontë Parsonage Museum. So now you can go there, you can see so many things. You can see all these drawings that they did, like the little books that they made off of pieces of pamphlets. And I do want to mention, so the one famous portrait of the three Brontë sisters, which I'll put a link to it in the show notes, but it's kind of the only portrait of them anyone ever really uses. And they're just kind of all looking really intensely out. But so I didn't realize that painting is by Branwell. And originally it had been the three of them and him. But then for some sort of, I don't know, but like, you know, we're laughing about Branwell, but I think he knew he was like the bonus Brontë. He painted over himself with a pillar. So it's like the three of them and a pillar in the middle. And that's where Branwell used to be. So it's known as like the pillar portrait. So Branwell got it. And I'm glad that he's not in the picture because I wouldn't want a picture with Branwell.
Not pictured Branwell, thankfully.
Yeah, but he was the one who painted it. So it's like that is his one contribution to this whole saga is he made, and because it's him and he painted them, it's like, well, he knew what they look like. And it's like a fairly representative painting. So we can kind of imagine what they look like.
He's not going to like sugarcoat what they look like because they're his sisters.
And no one knew them better than him. So I think you can also, when you have a painting by someone who knows them, it's not just like, well, this is what their hair color and their eye color were, but it's like, this is what they're like. And I think he captures that. So Branwell, you did one good thing in your life, making that painting. Thank you, Branwell. So what we do at the end of our biographical episodes is first, I don't think there's any, we do have a special award we can give to people for outstanding supporting performance, but they were just each other's outstanding supporting.
The only other person we have is Branwell, and he did not.
No. Branwell and the dad? No. Charlotte's husband? Who cares? Like, I don't think there are no outsiders in this story.
Charlotte's husband is a cameo at best.
Okay, so there's 4 categories, and each is a scale from 0 to 10. So the first one is how scandalous were the Brontes in their life. I would say 1 just because Emily is so fucking weird.
And they even like He did a good job of hiding how weird she was. It's like, oh, Emily can't be in society. Well, guess we're not showing Emily anymore.
Yeah, like no one knew. Like, how scandalous can you be if you're all housebound? There's no one to be scandalized by.
To be fair, yeah, like if you don't have the internet, you'd given any of these people the internet, different game.
Yeah, but the fact that all they can do is hang out with each other in their fantasy realm.
I'm just imagining the absolute chaos these three would rat in AO3.
Well, I think it's sort of like how one sees from like some, like homeschooled children and stuff, where it's just like people who don't interact with the world in their life, but on the internet they can do so much stuff. It's just, just the energy that they would have, like the stories, like they would have,
homeschool PKs who have a lot of extra health trauma. Like, that's what TikTok is made for in some ways.
Yeah. How would you agree with a 1 for scandaliciousness?
Absolutely.
Just because of Emily?
I know what my scores are going to look like. I am not new here.
Okay. So the next category, and this is like, and we're like choosing these scores based on them as a collective, which is how they live their life. Like, I'm not surprised that like Branwell died and then Emily died and then Anne died. It's like, because they can't, it's like cutting off the limb of like they can't live without all of them. Like
Charlotte tried to have a husband. That didn't work out.
No, it's just like the vibes are a bit sort of like the Virgin Suicides sisters.
Yes.
Kind of like one of them, except not blonde. It's like dark hair Virgin Suicide sisters. Like, well, either they're all alive or they're all dead. Like, there can't be some of each. That's not how it works. Okay, the next category is the scheminess.
Oh.
And, like Emily, 0. Charlotte
had writing? Sure.
Well, like...
She has the schemiest writing.
Charlotte had this scheme to like, let's publish books. Let's use male pseudonyms. Like Charlotte, that's a thing she did. Like that was literally a scheme.
Which, more power to her.
Yeah. Like, and also the scheme that she's just not just like, hey, let's have pseudonyms, let's publish books, but she was like, Anne was there trying to like get jobs, but Charlotte was the one who's just like, we need a source of income. Oh my God, you write books, let's write books. Like,
Anne's scheme is, let's be contributing members of society. Charlotte's scheme is, you're all writing a novel right now.
You're writing a novel, let's choose our pseudonyms, they all have to match. In terms of scheminess, like, I think just like there's an inherent scheminess in this era of like being a woman who's a writer, because you have to trick your way into it. Mm-hmm. So I like knowing how these scores are going to go. I could give them as high as a 5 for scheminess, because it was a scheme and she did do it. And I like the pettiness of the one publisher said no, so then she brought her other book to the other publisher and made him rich.
Yes. That was high quality right there.
Like, how would you feel about a 5 for scheminess?
I feel anything that makes their score better than Charlotte, it makes me happy.
Yeah.
Queen Charlotte.
Yes, Queen Charlotte has famously on this podcast a score of I think 1 out of 4. But I feel like Charlotte Brontë, like, she didn't do a lot of schemes, but when she did, it was good and it worked. Even though Emily's vibes are like bringing down the schemes because she's like so not scheming, I still think
again, most schemy story of all of them.
Wuthering Heights.
Like, Emily knows what a scheme is, and that's why her not doing any is more notable.
Yeah, her scheme was to just keep it all in fiction. So the next category is the significance, and I think this will be a very high number, because I think both they were very well regarded. Even before people knew who they were, their books were well regarded. And then when people knew who they were, then they were. The fact that there was a society dedicated to honoring them just like a couple decades after they died, when they all lived very short lives in this very obscure area. Like the significance, the fact there's like constant, every couple of years, there's a new Jane Eyre or Wuthering Heights adaptation. Like, people can't quit these stories.
Well, and that they were Irish Anglicans in England who still spoke Irish, and yet, to this very day, TikTok users are going to war over them.
Yeah, well, the fact that they were so sort of like in their that their father faced so much xenophobia, and then the fact that they achieved significance can only go so high. But I think the fact they're so significant when they even when they wrote the poetry book, like you said, like they didn't have any connections. It's not like Mary Shelley's dad was this well-known writer and her mom was this well-known writer. So like there were people there pulling for her, but like they were nobody. They were just like three extreme weirdo hermits.
And they tried to self-pub and didn't even do that right.
But their novels were so good that people couldn't ignore it. It's really motivational, I think, for a lot of people. It's like, because it can feel like with nepo babies and stuff. It's like, oh, does anyone have a chance? But it's like, well, these three did, and look what they were doing. They were drinking cemetery water in the middle of the moors, but their book was so good, people found it. It's inspiring.
Publishing is hard. Do not compare yourself to the Brontes. It takes work. But yeah, no, these three and their cemetery water and their little microscopic fandom wars.
If you're looking for a role model, I don't mean like exactly what they did. Well, thank God, exactly what happened to them, what they did, hopefully will not happen to anyone else. But I think just the fact that they could, that their ideas, like that their weird ass books did so well. Like they weren't writing to market, like they weren't being like, ooh, what will sell? They were just, this is all we can write.
Emily kind of was. Because Emily is writing the most Mrs. Radcliffe story out there.
The most sort of like gothic.
Like gothic, stuck in a house, weird people, random kid appears, tragic, like you don't know whether it's paranormal or like is there a ghost, like all that stuff. Like she's writing the most to market of the time, but it's not like there's a big market out there. Like there's not a lot of novels at all. Not a lot to compare them to. It's still a very young art form.
All of which, well, and that's true because we talked about in the Mary Shelley episode, like Frankenstein was really quite different from what other novels, like all novels were like in the form of letters for a long time. And then Frankenstein came along and that's part of why that book also has longevity, I think, because it feels contemporary, it feels new and interesting. I'm happy to give them a 10 for significance. I think I can't, in terms of like women writers that the average person has heard of, even if they haven't read the book. It's like if someone hasn't heard of the Brontes,
they're still taught in schools.
No, but you've heard the words Wuthering Heights. You've heard the name Jane Eyre. I don't think it's like Frankenstein. Like everyone has heard and kind of knows what that is, but like I think almost everybody, and that's the reason why I think there is a new Wuthering Heights movie. Why Emerald Fennell didn't just say like, "Hey, I made up a story set in this time period. It's called whatever." It's like, no, when you call it that, then there's an inherent interest because people have heard that phrase. Like people kind of is. Even if, and again, the movie comes out this week, doesn't look like this is going to be much like the book. But I'm happy. Great gowns, beautiful gowns. So the sexism bonus is how much did sexism hold them back? Now, I will say one way that it did is that Branwell got to go to school and they didn't, but they kind of found a way around that.
Yeah, it slowed them down. They were clearly the smart ones in the family, and no one was going to let them be. But they found a way anyway. But I don't think they let it slow them down.
No, and even the fact that like, oh, women can't publish books, it's like, okay, we'll use men's names. Like, and then they did, and then the books were successful. Like, I think there was a lot working against them, like the anti-Irishness, the fact they lived in this where everyone was dying always. They were poor. Like, I think even if it was like the Austins and the father's like, oh my God, you're great. Like, I'm going to pay. But it's like he couldn't have paid for them to go off and write. He couldn't have paid for them to go to college. They were poor. Like, that was more of a factor than their sex.
They were poor and Irish. I mean, that they were women is just why no one even tried, even though they were clearly geniuses.
Yeah, like I just don't, I think there was a lot in their way, but I don't think sexism was a big one. I think other ones were bigger.
Contributing factor at most.
Certainly. I mean, so I don't know, like a 3?
Yeah. Like it's not much of a bonus.
No,
Nor should it be.
No, exactly. And that's more for people who had really low scores in everything. Generally, they get a sexism bonus because they couldn't do anything because the sexism was so bad. But the Brontes had enough going on. So let me see. So the total score, Lana, is a 19.
I mean, I knew I know that when you invite me on this episode, I am telling a story, not getting a high score. Unless it's Catherine de Medici, and then that's baked in. I know my role. I am not Allison.
Well, and that's the thing. Even Allison doesn't get high scores when she comes on because those episodes are often very scandalous, but there's like very little significance.
I am significant. She's scandalous.
Yeah, and then every now and then. Well, that's why on this podcast, it's rare for someone to get a very high score. Like to get high in everything is rare. So just in terms of other people we've talked about on this podcast, for like you and I, for instance, Empress Sisi of Austria is a 21. And then, let me see, Maria Theresa is a 17. So the are right in between Empress Sisi and Maria Theresa in sort of the Lana Wood Johnson honorary neighborhood.
And the most important one of all, Caroline of Brunswick started out as a 21, but we corrected that in later episodes.
Well, that's because that was the very first episode, and I hadn't calibrated the scale. I didn't know. I didn't know what a number would mean, like unless you're comparing it to someone else. So she was originally
because there. The whole purpose of this podcast, the entire reason this exists, is so that Anne can write a book about Caroline of Brunswick.
And it worked.
And it works.
With the scheminess of Charlotte Brontë. With Lana's suggestion, I was like, I would like to write a book about Caroline of Brunswick, but you can't write a book about someone that no one's heard of if also no one's heard of you. So then I started a podcast so that people would have heard of me. And now my book, Rebel of the Regency, The Scandal Saga of Caroline of Brunswick, Britain's Uncrowned Queen, is available in bookstores everywhere. Get all the information at rebeloftheregency.com. Actually, since we're talking about that, I will just mention to everybody as well that I have some events coming up. For instance, when you're listening to this, if you're not going to go see Wuthering Heights movie on Friday night, Friday the 13th of February, I am having a book launch. It's going to be local to the city I live in, which is Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, but it's going to also be live streamed on YouTube, so you can join there, like join the chat, ask your questions. Like I'll be interacting with everybody. So it's going to be this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. I'll put the link in the show notes. And I'm also going to be, so there's this event in Saskatoon. And then next week, I'm going to be February the 19th. I'll be in Halifax, Nova Scotia, doing an event at the library. And then on February 27th, I'm going to be in Vancouver, BC at Iron Dog Books. And all the information is on the events page at rebeloftheregency.com. And I'm really excited for people to read my book. There's no crossovers between the Brontes and Caroline of Brunswick because they were little toddlers when she died. There was no overlap. Although I guess if you're doing like a 6 degrees of separation, like the Brontes were big fans of Lord Byron, and Lord Byron was one of Caroline's friends. So
there is a Jane Austen quote, though.
Yes, Jane Austen was around when Caroline of Brunswick was having her scandalous time, and Jane Austen. It's a great quote. It's in my book. It's everywhere.
My favorite quote.
It's like, I will always support that man I always support Caroline because she is a woman and because I hate her husband. So it's like Jane Austen supports Caroline of Brunswick, and I think everyone else should too. Thank you, Lana, for this amazing, thank you. Honestly, I was like, I need to do the Brontes because the Wuthering Heights movie is coming up, and this is kind of the time period, and it connects so well with the other women authors I've talked about, but I was like, I can't. I need to have the appropriate level of respect for the Brontes, and I don't personally have that, and I know so many people are into them, so I'm happy that you're here to represent all the Bronte stans.
I'm always happy to represent real Bronte fans.
Well, thank you so much, Lana. And if people want to hear us talk about Jane Eyre at length, join my Patreon and listen to that episode, which I think is going to come out today as well. Anyway, thank you so much, Lana Wood Johnson. And to everybody else, keep your pants on and your tits out. Vulgar History is researched, scripted, and hosted by Anne Foster. Editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. Regency-era artwork by Karen Moynihan. Social media videos by Magdalena Denson. Transcripts of this podcast are available at vulgarhistory.com by Aveline Malik. You can get early, ad-free episodes of Vulgar History by becoming a paid member of our Patreon at patreon.com/AnneFosterWriter. Vulgar History merchandise is available at vulgarhistory.com/store for Americans and at vulgarhistory.redbubble.com for everyone else. Follow us on social media at Vulgar History Pod. Get in touch with me at vulgarhistorypod@gmail.com.
Oh, please, not that music. That music gives me nightmares from my childhood.
Could we get something a little bit lighter, some lighter music here?
Are you a fan of true crime TV shows?
And what about Unsolved Mysteries, the show that jump-started all of our love of true crime?
I'm Ellen Marsh.
And I'm Joey Taranto.
And we host I Think Not, a true crime comedy podcast covering some of the wildest stories from your favorite true crime campy TV shows all the way to Unsolved Mysteries.
Baby, you will laugh, you will cry, you'll think about true crime in a whole new way, and you'll also ask yourself, who gave these people mics?
New episodes of I Think Not are released every Wednesday with bonus episodes out every Thursday on Patreon.
And every Monday, you can listen to our True Crime Rundown, where we go over the top true crime headlines of the week.
So come and join us wherever you listen to your podcasts.
The war is over, and both sides lost. Kingdoms were reduced to cinders, and armies scattered like bones in the dust. Now the survivors claw to what's left of a broken world, praying the darkness chooses someone else tonight. But in the shadow dark, the darkness always wins. This is old school adventuring at its most cruel. Your torch ticks down in real time, and when that flame dies, something else rises to finish the job. This is a brutal rules-light nightmare with a story that emerges organically based on the decisions that the characters make. This is what it felt like to play RPGs in the 80s, and man, it is so good to be back. Join the Glass Cannon podcast as we plunge into the shadow dark every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on youtube.com/theglasscannon with the podcast version dropping the next day. See what everybody's talking about and join us in the dark.
For 8 years, we've been asking the same question over and over again. How did this happen? My name's Mandy.
And I'm Melissa, and we're the hosts of Moms and Mysteries, the true crime podcast with over 55 million downloads.
We're two Florida moms who are obsessed with mysteries. Each week, we do deep dives into fascinating true crime stories.
We cover everything from infamous cases like Casey Anthony
to the bizarre and complex crimes right here in our home state, like the shocking murder of FSU professor Dan Markell.
We bring you the facts, but with warmth and wit you'd only get from two friends who have been hooked on mysteries since childhood.
Join us for new episodes of Moms and Mysteries every Tuesday and Thursday.
Listen to Moms and Mysteries on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.